So I shot the horse head in H alpha last night, and it turned out pretty amazing. But what I thought I'd do tonight would be to shoot it in RGB and combine those two. Even though I've already done a video on that, I haven't done it with this camera. Also, from my last video, I thought I had the spacing right. I was still getting elongated stars, so let me show you really quick what I finally did to freaking fix this once and for all. Okay, so in a previous video, I talked about the Meade 0.8 times focal reducer flattener and how it comes with a ring here. It's about 11 millimeters, almost matches this 11 millimeter collar. And it says for 80 millimeter APO. This little Bader coma corrector spacer I have in here is a total backyard engineering adder piece that I found really needs. It's an extra 2 millimeters, but I was trying to not use this. And guess what? I needed it. So anyway, 6.5 millimeters back from the face to the sensor or the camera, 20 millimeters of filter wheel, 2 millimeters of your T2 adapter, 11 millimeters of your collar, 16.5 millimeters spacer, get you to the 55 millimeters, not from the main focal reducer, but from this added ring that this Meade Series 6000 0.8 times reducer flattener has to have it. Can't do without it. So from here to here is 55 millimeters. All right, so we are cooled down to minus 30, and yes. And we're gonna try to do. I'm gonna try to do. I'm thinking like an hour on red, blue, green each filter. Probably do 2-minute subs, so divide that up. So basically this is my south direction, and the Horsehead Nebula is pretty much going to be at the Meridian right when I get started here. So I might have to let it pass and then I'll start. And then I'll combine it in Photoshop with the HA data that I shot the other night and do another composite video, even though I've already done one, blah, blah, blah. It was with a DSLR, so this should be much better. Plus, I'm going to show you a really cool technique that I learned from another YouTube site called Nebula Photos, as far as how to stack and align all of your data information in Deep Sky Stacker. So we're going to start there and move over to Photoshop and process. All right, stay tuned. Alright, so here we are in Deep Sky Stacker, and what we're going to do is we're going to combine our red, blue, and green data, and that's the difference with this video. Is I shot this with my mono camera, the 1600 mm Pro. So what I want to show you is how to combine this data in Deep Sky Stacker and use a registration frame so that they all line up to it, which makes it a lot easier to combine your frames in. So first, let's go here to open picture files, and we're going to find our data, Horsehead HaRgb, and let's go into the blue. So here are all our blue subs. They were 120 seconds at unity gain, bin 1 by 1. So we're going to select the first one, scroll all the way down, and hold the shift key and select the last one and click open. So let's get the dark files for that set, and the cool thing about this is that we can use the same dark files for each set or each channel or each color. So select the first one, shift key, select the last one, click open. So this is our main group. Now, flat files, I shot for each color. and you're going to need to remember that when you're doing these RGB data sets with a mono camera. So horsehead, RGB, let's go into our flat files, and we're going to go blue. So once again, select the first, hold shift key, select the last, and click open. Okay, so and one thing you got to remember when using this camera is not much can view your subs to be able to preview. So you can click the first one here, and you're going to see you're going to get this image. Slide this gray slider over to the left hand side, and that's going to apply a stretch. You can see a little bit of the flame, and you're really going to have to go through each one of these in Deep Sky Stacker. If you guys know a better way, another program, because I used to use Adobe Bridge, and that won't even open these FITS files. So you see we flipped there, we did a Meridian flip, so the image actually flips. So you can go through each one. So right now in this main group, we did our blue. So we have all of our lights, and we have our darks, you see the D, and then you scroll down, we have our flats. That's all I did. I didn't do bias with this. So let's go here and click on group 1. And this is really cool. Like if you guys are not using a filter wheel and you're pulling your camera out and changing the filters, as long as you're shooting the same ISO or the same unity gain and exposure length, you can use this method too, and it'll align all your frames to a reference frame. So group 1, let's go up here to open picture file, and we're going to go to green. So let's open our green, select the first one, select the last one, click open. So now it's populated this group 1 with our green files. And the way I know that is I'm a HaRgb, so my number 2 filter is red, my number 3 filter is green, and my number 4 filter is blue. So you see L4, that's my blue filter. L3, that's my green filter. So we've already loaded our darks, we don't have to load them again. So let's go up here and just load our flats for the blue, or excuse me, for the green. So select the first one, shift key, select the last one, open. So now this group has basically it has our green data, or green subs, and you scroll down and it has the green flats. So let's click into group 2. Let's load our last one here, which is our red. So go into the red folder here, select the first one, and shift key, open those, and let's put our flats in there. So go to the red, first one, shift key, last one, and open. So our main group has our blue images, our next group has our green, and our last group has our red. So first thing I want to do when I have all those loaded is I want to score my frames, so I know which frame to make a reference frame out of. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say check all. So basically that's checked everything we've loaded. You see group 3 has nothing. It's ready for another data set, but we're not going to populate that one. So group 2, everything's checked. Group 1, everything's checked. And our main group, everything's checked. So with that done, we're going to say register check pictures. I like to go ahead and check register already registered pictures. But I'm going to uncheck, this is important, uncheck stack after registering. I do not want to stack. So let's do a star count over here. Let's click the advanced tab, hit compute, detected stars. So it's saying 372 stars, that's plenty. So right now, what we're going to do is click OK to this, and it's going to register all the frames, including our calibration frames. And so what I'll do is I'll pause, and I'll be right back when this is done. Okay, it's done. We got 113 light frames, 20 dark frames, and 45 flat frames. It's because we have flat frames for each color. So if you look up here, we got a score, and the first time you do this, your scores will be crazy. I mean, they'll be random. So if you click this little drop down list and click it back up, it sorts them. So our blue data has a score, the highest score of 2601. And one way you can really check your frames too, not just looking at them, but you can look at the scores. And if see how these scores are averaging over 2,000. If you get one that's like 400, then you know you want to look at that one because something's funky. So let's look at our worst one. And I've already pretty much looked at all these just to make sure we didn't have any major airplane passing through or anything like that. So, but you can go back and look through them at this point. So our blue has a score of 2601. Let's go into our green. Now look at our green, much higher score, 3,787. So let's scroll down here and make sure we don't have any weirdness. Let's look at the worst one. See, we got a satellite in there, but it'll average out with Kappa Sigma clipping. And then let's go over here to our red data. High score 3,056. So let's make sure we don't have any really low ones. So we got a good average, got a good set of scores here. I can remember first doing this and my scores were like 800 for the highest, which means I had a lot of elongated stars. So let's go over here back to our group 1. This is the green. And our highest score of all of them was 3,787. So we're going to right click on that. And look at that. It's got a high score, but we got a big airplane. You know, a deep sky stacker should get rid of that, but guess what I'm going to do? I'm not going to take a chance. I'm going to remove that one from the list. It's a good one to see. Let's click on our next one up. Cool. Still a high score. Right click on that. Remember, it says use as reference frame. Let's just check that. And you see it's got a little asterisk beside it. Asterisk. So basically, when we restack all these now, when we start to stack them, because we haven't stacked them, we've just registered. When we stack them, everything's going to stack against that frame right there. It's going to use that frame and align it and scooch it so it matches that one right there. So with that being said, everything's still checked. So let's come up here and uncheck all. Let's go to our main group, which is the blue. We're going to check the first one, or highlight the first one. Hold our shift key, works the same way here. Highlight the last one, that selects all, and then right click and hit check. So our group 1, which is our green, is all unchecked. Group 2 is all unchecked. So the blue frames, flats and darks and lights are all checked. We're going to come back over here to register check pictures, except for this time we want to say stack after registering. And one thing I want to do here is go into my stacking parameters, and I have enabled 2x drizzle. So if you're dithering, you definitely want to have that checked when you're using these mono images. I've noticed that when I'm using the DSLR and I'm shooting one-shot color, the images are so huge. I still have not had a computer upgrade that can handle it, even when I save it in the 16-bit mode. But now that I'm shooting mono, it seems to handle it just fine, and it really does improve your star quality. So enable 2x drizzle if you're shooting mono like this. It's what I've found. I don't go into anything else. I leave that set. Click OK to that. So stack after registering is checked. Main group is all checked. And let's stack these. So just click OK. And basically what this is going to do is it tell you an hour and 14 minutes on blue, and click OK to that. And it'll chew through and stack all of our blue frames against this this frame over here. I can't click on it now, but this frame over here in green. And one thing you need to know is because that's the green frame was the reference frame, it's going to put the autosave file in the folder where your green data is. I didn't realize that at first, and I couldn't find it. So that's definitely something that you want to look out for. And as soon as this is done, though, before we do anything else, we're going to go find that file and we're going to rename it green so we don't get them confused, because it's always going to say autosave in Deep Sky Stacker. So let's let that chew through this data, and then we'll come back in here on the video when the blue lights are stacked. Okay, so the blue data is done. See this black bar? That means it shifted it over to line up with the green. So that's really going to help. It just means we got to crop some, but we would have to crop anyway. So let's minimize that. Let's go into the folder. Horsehead, HaRgb. Let's go to our green. Click into it, and we're just going to name it green. Not grin. That's what I'm doing right now because I can't spell. Green. Okay, minimize that. Let's come back in here to Deep Sky Stacker. Let's hit register check pictures and hit cancel. So we're going to go over here to our blue data. We're going to select our lights and our flats only. Leave our darks alone. Leave them checked. So select our lights and then shift on our last flat here. Right click, uncheck. So our blue lights are unchecked. And then we want to uncheck our blue flats. And hit uncheck. So our darks are still checked because we're going to calibrate them against all of our colors. So let's come over here to our green. Select the first one. Scroll down. So that's the lights and the flats. Shift. Select the last one. Right click and hit click check. So now our green lights, our green flats are checked, and our darks are still checked that we loaded over here in group 1. So come back up here to register check pictures. Click OK. 1 hour and 10 minutes of green, and click OK to that. Alright, so this is our green. You can definitely see the effects of micro lensing. I'm learning a lot about that around this really bright star. Alright, so let's minimize that. Go back into our folder here, Horsehead, and go back to the green folder. You'll see we have another autosave, so that's our blue one. So let's rename that blue and minimize that. Come back in here to Deep Sky Stacker, register check pictures. We're going to cancel that. So we go in here to group 1. We're going to select the first one, scroll all the way down here, shift key, select the last one, right click, and uncheck everything in that group. We're done with green. Move over here to red. Go to the first one, scroll all the way down to our last flat file, shift key, right click, check all. So our reds are checked, and remember our darks over here are still checked. So register check pictures, stack after registering, and it gets kind of redundant, and click OK. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click this, hour and 20 minutes of red, and when this is done, then we will jump over to Photoshop and combine them with also with some hydrogen alpha data that I've also captured and processed already. And I'll show you how to blend all those together to make a composite image using shooting mono. All right. I'm the evil astronomer. Seriously, this is weird. I'm waiting on it to flip, and I thought, you know, I'll just record this. But then this happened because I have no light. Anyway, hold on. So we have an automatic Meridian flip going on. Figured I would show you guys on my lonely little cell phone here. I don't know what the temperature is, but it's pretty cold for Florida. So you can see it is going to do a flip. I had to figure this out in 6 minutes. That little dash is not feet, it's minutes. Yeah, so, and look at the temperature. That's badass. Anyway, I guess I'll turn it back on when it actually starts flipping. Alright, so as you can see, we are down to 2 minutes. All I have checked on here is delay is counted after Meridian passing, and then I don't have blind solve, and I don't want to recalibrate because I've already calibrated PhD2. So see, now it's counting down the seconds, and what it'll do is it'll flip the telescope to the other side of the meridian. It will solve the image again, make sure it's still centered on my target, the Horsehead Nebula. And then it'll start over here. It'll say start. See, it says stopping. It stopped PhD2 guiding, and then it'll restart it. So we are 26 seconds away from it flipping. This is really cool. I don't have to worry about that hitting that. It's 9 seconds, 8 seconds, and I'm delayed. 5. Anyway. Super stoked. You go with your bad self. Okay, so now it's gonna plate solve. It's settling. Settle down. And then it's going to take an image. So there it is. There's the point graph that pops up automatically. And I have it on like a 15-second delay to let it start tracking a little bit before it does, because I've noticed every once in a while I get some squirrely looking stars. Gotta let my mouse settle down, let it adjust. And then when it's all done, it'll continue with the imaging sequence that I have. So exposure finished. Takes a 10-second exposure. There it is. Look, it's on the other side now. I'm pretty sure I have this star centered. So see, that's where it wants to put the star. It's going to move that star right to that point. Hello, -30. You beautiful -30. Okay. So it's finished. It centered it. And
filter change. Exposure started.
Now it's starting the thing. And PhD2 guiding is started. It changed the filter back to the blue filter. And it is firing away on, let's see what we got going on here. We got a bunch. We got 120. We got 120 subs. 120. 45 subs at 120 seconds. Shooting blue first because it's at the highest point. And then, yeah. Oh, it looks so freaking evil. Anyway, there's like literally coyotes howling out here. I don't know if you can hear it. Anyway, so yeah, that's how we did the, that's how we stacked. And now let's jump over to Photoshop and make some magic happen, baby. Coyotes are scaring me. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. You can see in front of me here is the hydrogen alpha data that I shot on the Horsehead with the mono camera. This is about 2 hours of data. Subs were about 3 minutes, cooled down to -20, and I shot this with Unity gain. Pretty cool looking structure here. Really get some fine wispy details in here that I've never gotten before with the DSLR, so really stoked about this. So let's bring in our red, blue, and green data that we stacked. I moved that over to a different folder, so we're going to come here to open. Let's go find that data. Let's see here. So we just highlight those and click open. So that's going to bring in our 3 files. And with some of these images that I processed, it works pretty good to pre-process each one of these to try to stretch them, do noise reduction, do levels and curves, especially with narrowband. But for some reason with this particular target, And you'll just have to experiment. I found that just combining them right off the bat is the best, because I got some really funky colors that were really hard to process out when I tried to stretch it, because you're just stretching by eyeball basically. So what I don't want to do is any pre-processing to any of this. I want to process it combined. So right now, if you click into these files when they come in and you go to image mode, they're going to be in 32-bit and they're going to be in grayscale. So I want to we want to change that right off the bat here. So let's select our blue data and hit Control A, Control C. So Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and then Control N is going to create a new document. And we're going to call this horse HaRgb. And today is March the 7th, so 3/7. And down here in the color mode, we want to change that to RGB. And we also want to change it to 16-bit, so it opens up all of our processing options here in Photoshop. So hit create, go over here to channels, and go to the blue, because that's the blue data that we copied first, and then hit Control V. So there's our blue data. Let's go to the green, Control A, Control C. Go to the RGB image that we created, go into the green channel and hit Control V. And before we do the red, we want to zoom in here and turn on the blue channel and just make sure that the stars aren't moving, which means they're not in line. So everything seems to be lined up. It's just something that you should double check. So let's go here to our red and hit Control A, Control C. Go back over here to our RGB image, look at the red channel, and Control V. And with that being said, before we do anything else, let's turn our green on. So the stars don't appear to be moving. If they were out of line, you'd see the star here, and then here, and then here, and then here. So they seem to be overlapping pretty good. So now let's just hit RGB and go in here to our layers. So cool. So we knew that our image was upside down. So let's go over here to image rotation on a 180 degrees. We'll flip them all at once. So you can see in our histogram up here, let's change that to colors. You can definitely tell that we've got some funkiness here in the our channels, are basically our three colors are not aligned, and we've got this little line right here, which is basically this crop bar. So we come here to crop and just crop the image, crop that bar out of there, that little overlap bar where we registered all of our pictures, and hit image, crop. You'll see it's gone. And the other thing we want to do here is we want to kind of line up our channels, but it's so dark I can't even see where the data is right now. So let's not really worry about that. Let's get this thing stretched some so that we can kind of see what we're doing. So let's duplicate that layer, drag it down here to this folded paper icon and let go. And we're just going to call this levels. We're going to have to do quite a few stretches here to be able to start seeing the horse head and the flame. So I'm just going to go in here to image, adjustment, levels. And I'm going to really be aggressive with this and push it right up. Not all the way, I don't want to clip any of the data, but I want to push it right up here just before that little foot, this little foot right here. Click OK. Now look at our channels. They're all over the place. We're going to fix that. So let's come back in here to image, adjustment, and levels. And just move that right to the back of that red channel. Now you can see the horse head's popping up there. There's the flame. So now let's, we know from experience that we have the flame here, we've got the horse head here, we've got a lot of nebulosity. We can come over here to our HA and see a lot of our gas and dust is round here, but kind of down in here and maybe over here we don't have so much. So let's set a color sampler tool so we know where our values are at in our info panel. So come here to the eyedropper tool, use a drop down list, say color sampler. Let's just get right down here, not on a star, but right there. So you can see our RGB values are quite different. So a quick way to line those up is to come over here to image, adjustment, levels, and click this. You get three little eyedropper tools. This is your white point, your gray point, and your set black point. So let's double click into that. And you can change these values here, but I have them already set to 33 for red, 33 for green, and 34 for blue. So click OK to that. Go right over here to the color sampler tool and click right on it. And you can see almost right off the bat that drastically changed the image. We've got a little bit of a gradient in here we're going to get rid of, but now we can continue on stretching this, because now our three channels are basically lined up. So let's do another level stretch here. Let's go right up to the data. Click OK. Image, adjustment, levels. You can see our histogram right here is starting to widen. Let's push that over right down to that 30, 32, 32, 34. That's fine for right now. So now you can start seeing the horse head, and you can see micro lensing. That square, that's micro lensing. That's a ASI 1600 issue. So you can also see we got a lot of purple surrounding the image. So let's get rid of that with a gradient exterminator. So let's drag this down, duplicate that copy, rename that one gradient X. So we're going to grab our lasso tool. Lasso. I've got a feather of 40 pixels. I'm just going to draw right around the flame and the horse head and everything here. Right there. And then come up here to select and inverse. And then I'm going to go filter. Down here to the plugin RC Astro Gradient Exterminator. I've got the detail and aggressiveness set to medium, and I'm going to click OK. And we'll let that do its thing. You can see that really evened out the background. So now we want to turn that selection off by hitting deselect. And I'm a big proponent of not stretching noise. And even though I have a cooled astronomy camera, there's a little bit of noise in here that I don't want to stretch any more than I already have. So here's a really cool technique for getting rid of the background noise, but not disrupting the details in your nebula here, and the structure and the sharpness of it. So let's duplicate that layer again to the folded paper icon here. Let's rename this one BG Noise. And then we're going to make a copy of that layer. So we have BG Noise Copy and BG Noise. So with BG Noise Copy selected, we're going to come up here to Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise. And this is set from the last time I've used it. Strength of 8, preserved details at 26%. I've got reduced color noise at 50% and sharpened details down to 10%. And I'm going to click OK to that. So it's probably going to be tough for you guys here to see the effects this has because it's so dark. But basically, let's zoom in here and let's turn it on and off. You might be able to see it, but quite a bit of noise here. Turn it on, noise is gone. But it's also affected our horse head. So we've got some sharpness, we got noise right in here, but we also have sharpness, and then we lose that sharpness. And what we want to do is get that back. So with this top layer, the BG Noise Copy selected, we're going to come down here to this little square with a hole in the middle of it. That's a layer mask, and we're going to click that. It's going to apply a layer mask in white here. And basically what we do is we come down here to BG Noise, and we're going to copy that. So Control A to select all, Control C to copy, we're going to hold the Alt key down and click into that layer mask, and then hit Control V to paste it. So it's basically pasted a grayscale image of that selection. And we want to invert this layer mask, so we hit Control I. So now what was white is, or what was black is now white, what was white is now black. So with that done, we come in here to Image, Adjustment, Levels. And now all our data is up against the right hand side. Why? Because everything's black or white. So we're going to push this black slider over to the data, and you're going to start seeing the Flame Nebula and the Horsehead reveal itself in black. So let's do it right about there. So let's move the white slider over. And what we're doing is we're finding a balance, because everything in white is going to receive the noise reduction and everything in black is not. And what's in gray is going to receive a smaller percentage. And with that data being real thin, these two values are going to be pretty close to each other. Let's push that over. So you can see our Flame Nebula's got quite a bit of black. We've got quite a bit of darkness around the Horsehead. Obviously, All Attack and some of these brighter stars in here are black. We've got a good amount of white in here, so I'm going to click OK to that. And then I'm going to right click on that top layer, the copy one, and click Merge Down. So our Horsehead, you can see it got a little noise reduction right here where it's black, but we still have some good sharpness in here. But we really got a lot of good noise reduction in the background here. So I'm happy with that. So let's hit Select, Deselect. So we've basically aligned our colors or our background. We did a levels adjustment, we did gradient exterminator, and we've done a background noise reduction. So that being said, let's use an adjustment layer. This is something new that I've been playing with and finding some value at them. So we're going to use a curves adjustment layer. We're going to calculate our RGB and get it lined up right. We don't want to raise our background value because it's right now 36, 35, 36. So finger tool. We want to click right here at that color sampler tool. And then we want to anchor that selection. So we want to make sure those two values are even, which they are still even after anchoring it. And we just want to lift. Now you see All Attack starting to really get blown out here, and I don't want to do it any more than that, but here's our Horsehead starting to pop up. So let's close that out. Let's do another curves adjustment layer. Calculate our RGB. Select our finger tool here, and then select the black point, anchor it, and then let's zoom in on All Attack here, and you can see, whoa, see it's getting almost off the chart. So let's go somewhere right in there, anchor it, and you see a curved line. Let's look, 185, 186. We're going to change that to 186. So now the line's good and straight. So we've anchored our dark point here. We've anchored our bright point, which is here. So we theoretically shouldn't be adjusting the dark or the brightest part of this picture. But if you click the finger tool again, you can see where the Horsehead is. It's way down in here, the flame way up in here. So we're just going to lift right here at the front of the histogram peak. So now look, our Horsehead really is popped out. And we still got a little bit of funkiness around the corner, but we'll work on that. And like I haven't said this yet, but this video really isn't about aesthetics as much as it is the process of combination. And then I'll leave the aesthetics and some of the work of cleaning up these images to you guys. This is just about combining this data set now that we have a mono camera. So we've got some good detail. The Horsehead's popped out quite a bit. So I'm going to show you one other thing to really bring this Horsehead out, but really not affect these stars or any of the backgrounds. We're going to do one more curves adjustment layer. So you can see our histogram here has gotten just a little bit wider. Now it's starting to get a nice foot because we've got a curve to this. So we're just going to bring this up, and we're just really going to be looking at the flame and horse head. We're going to bring this up globally. So right in there. I like that. So you see we've basically blown out our stars, our background's all jacked up, we're up to 62. That's fine. Click that. Go into this layer mask, point at it, and hit Control I. That's going to invert the layer mask, and you see it put us right back to where we were. So with the hide all basically selected, or turn this layer mask black, we want our reveal to be white. And if it's not white, you just point at it and hit the letter D on your keyboard, and it'll change it either black or white. And then you use these little arrow keys to change your foreground color. So with this one, because our layer mask is black, we want to change our foreground to white, and we're going to click our brush tool. And my brush tool is set to opacity of 23%, flow of 46%. And our bracket keys make it bigger or smaller on the fly. So that being said, I'm going to come right in here and I'm just going to start painting in. I can actually reduce that real light, just painting in. And you can see I really you can almost tell where I've painted because my opacity. Let's go back and turn that down. It's almost too aggressive on the opacity, yes. We're going to drop that opacity down. We're also going to drop our flow down here. And we're just painting in. We're just brightening up. Brighten up this little nebula right here. So we basically just brighten the horse head. With that done, we can right click into that layer mask and hit select a mask. And then let's feather that selection. Sometimes it needs to get up into 120, 130 pixels before you can actually see it make a difference. Click OK to that, and that kind of feather that out. So now this is basically 3 curves adjustments that we've made. And so we can group those by selecting the first one, hitting the shift key, select the last one, drag all that down to this folder, and then rename that one curves. And this curve is adjustable in the opacity. See, we can adjust that down. Everything that we've done in that group is now adjustable in opacity level, situation here or level. So let's raise that back up to 100%. And I'm going to call that good, even though I've got some funkiness here where I highlighted that. Not really worried about it. So right now, this is my group. And I want to basically put a stamp of everything that I've done on top of this group. So with this curves group selected here, I'm going to hold the shift key, make the shift key, the alt key, and the control key, and press the letter E. And that's going to put a stamp on top. And one other thing I want to do here is go into the camera raw filter, just kind of put some final tweaks on this image. So we're going to go over here to filter, camera raw filter, and in the camera raw filter I want to boost the clarity. You can see it really kind of brings that horse head out. It's also going to raise, this is global, so all attack's also going to get bright. Let's increase the vibrance. Come over here to our highlights and let's drop that down, see if we can't bring some of that star brightness down, increase the lights, and drop the shadows just a little bit, sharpen it up just a little bit, and do a little luminance and color noise reduction. Okay, so this would be a good place to save it. So let's go here to File, Save As, HaRgb. We're going to call that horse. We've already named it, so it's horse HaRgb 37. Click OK to that. So here's our file, here's everything we've done. So let's go ahead and go in here to layers, and then go down here to flatten and flatten the image. And I always like to duplicate a copy right off the bat. So we basically don't need our blue data anymore, or green data, or this red data. Let's get rid of that. So here's our HA, here's our RGB. Now we want to create an HAR version. So what we're going to do is come in here to channels. We're going to go to the red channel, and we're going to hit Control A, Control C, and Control N. Remember, that creates a new one. We don't want grayscale or 8-bit, so we're going to change that to RGB, and we're going to change it to 16-bit. And hit apply, and then not in the channels, just in the layers, we'll hit Control V. So this is the red channel of our RGB. So we can rename this one HaRgb. Let's come over here to our HA and hit Control A, Control C, and go over here to our HAR canvas, and then hit Control V. So these were obviously not aligned in Deep Sky Stacker because one was RGB and one was HA. So we're going to have to take a little bit of time to line them up. All right, so now let's rename this layer HA. And we're going to drop the opacity, because we're going to have to line these up. So we want to line the HA to the RGB. We don't want to move the RGB because remember, it's aligned with our composite image. So we want to move our HA layer, not the other way around. So with the HA layer selected, we select the move tool, and you can see the stars are like so much smaller in the HA layer. You're going to have to come in here and kind of use your arrow keys to select. And then, like I said before, you can turn it on and off. The stars seem to be moving around the edge, so let's pan back out. Yeah, we've got some rotating to do. So you can see over here, see the stars move. So with that said, we're going to hit Control T. T is in Tom. And when you hover outside, you'll see your little arrow turn to a kind of a semicircle. That means you can click and rotate the image. So I'm just going to rotate it close. And let's see how that looks. Hit the check mark. And maybe all I needed, because it's pretty close. Let's check up here. Now, I've noticed when I shoot HA, even I can have all this lined up, and my perimeter stars will not be lined up. See how they need to go in here, but they need to go in up here as well. So how the heck do you do that? So the only way I've been able to figure out is to use the warp tool. My stars in the middle are lined up pretty well, but the stars around the edges aren't. So we're going to hit Control T. And then with that done, we hit right click and then we hit warp. And now we're just going to come in here and move the stars around very slightly to just get these perimeter stars lined up. And this is a tedious process that for some reason I find I have to do when I'm combining hydrogen alpha to RGB. And if you guys want to leave a message in the comment and let me know why, or if I'm doing something wrong, I would appreciate it. This is the workaround, this is the fix. That's fun, right? Okay, so see, we're good here. We're good in that corner. Let's go down here to the bottom's out. Bottom left-hand corner. And again, kind of breaking my own rule here by doing all this lining up, but it is something good for you guys to see when you're combining this, because if you're just trying to use the move tool and the rotate tool to get things to line up, you'll be here all day long, because I've been. Okay, so let's hit the check mark, check it right there. Let's turn it on and off. Looks good. So we're not going to use 100% of the HA layer. We want to use a blended version. So I kind of like using just under 50% when I'm doing this. So it's not too dramatic, but we're definitely getting some of these details in here. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to get a little more. I'm going to go 55%, 54%, like that. So with that done, we are going to merge that down. So now we have a composite HAR version that is going to be pasted back in the red channel of the RGB. So we're going to hit Control A, Control C, go back into our RGB canvas here, go to Channels, go to the red channel, and hit Control V. And let's make sure we're lined up. Cool. So select, deselect, and we can see the effects of this if we come over here to our history and we select canvas. See, that's before we pasted it in. We pasted it and deselect, and there it's pasted in. We definitely have a lot more detail. We've got some pretty blue stars in here too, and this would be something you'd want to work on, but I'm not for this video, for the sake of this video. Okay, so let's rename this one HaRgb. And this is our hydrogen alpha data. So we are going to now paste that. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste it on top of this. And the technique is to turn a lot of the stars off with this layer using dust and scratches, but it's not going to be lined up. So I don't want to do that just yet. With the one thing we want to make sure is that over here in the channels, our RGB is selected, not our red, but RGB. You can have all these turned on. Let's see how our red channel is selected. We want to make sure RGB is selected. So over here in layers, we want to come over here to our HA data, and we want to copy this and paste it on top of our RGB. So Control A to select all, Control C to copy. Come over here to our horsehead, RGB, and Control V. Got to put a new layer on top. Let's rename that one HA, not HS, but HA, so we don't get confused. And we're going to drop the opacity. So now we see we got to move it and line it up just like we did before. So click our Move tool, and I'm going to probably edit out this portion of the video so you don't have to see me do this twice. Okay, so I went through and aligned everything. Looks pretty good. So we've got basically 100% of our HA layer turned on here at 100%. We've got RGB, turn that off below it. And then I've made a copy just in case I don't like this. I always have a background copy of RGB, which is basically like below it. So let's merge that down because it's not a real copy. And then let's duplicate it. And we're going to name that RGB. So with the HA layer turned off so you can't see it, we're coming back down here to RGB, and we're going to hit go here and filter, noise, dust and scratches. And we want to blend out most of the stars, but not all of them. So let's set to a radius of 7 and see what that looks like. So looks pretty good. Got a lot of star reduction in here. Dust and scratches honestly will also kind of disrupt your details of your nebula. So one thing I like to do after I've done that is change the blending mode to darken. And basically it gets rid of the stars, but you see, it brings back a lot of the detail that you need to keep. So let's come back over here to this HA layer. We're going to turn it back on, leave it at 100%, and we're going to change its blending mode to luminosity. Bam. I don't know about you, but that's badass. So let's kind of drop that opacity down. We want to let some of that red come through from the layer below. And the other thing we can do is come in here to the HA layer. We'll go here to Image Adjustment Levels. Not levels, but Image Adjustment Curves. We're just going to bring that down slightly, just a little bit. And we'll go to our HaRgb layer and then go Image Adjustment Curves. And we're going to raise it up right here at the foot of the data, right here at the head of the data. Just slightly. Cool. So, big difference. So we got about 76%, high 70s. I'm kind of cool with that. I like that. I want to keep some of this detail in here. So what I'll do now is I'm going to merge these two layers together. So HA and then Shift RGB and say merge layers. So now what we can do to get some of, because we kind of get this pinky salmony color, which is the dreaded color. Let's duplicate that copy. We're starting right there. And we're gonna hit this threshold icon down here. We're gonna hit selective color. So with our red selected, we can take out some of the cyan. And you see that's gonna start really pulling in some reds that we want. The other thing that's going to give you more color here in the selective color threshold is to decrease, or actually increase, the blacks. It's going to start honestly applying like vibrance and saturation. We can also apply just a little bit of magenta and a little bit of yellow. And you can see what that did. I mean, right there, we've got a really cool image. This flame nebula has a lot of yellow in it, and one way we can isolate that is go back in here to selective color as a threshold, as an adjustment layer, and with that selected, we can come over here to select color range, and we can go to sample colors and click right here. There, got it. Just keep clicking around. It's also going to work a little bit on this horse head here. So let's click OK to that. And we can come here to the yellow tab, and we can just add some yellow to that. And then a little bit of black to give it some depth. We can also come in here to the neutrals tab, and you got to be real cautious with the neutrals tab because it really adds color. And there's our yellow right there. So we've also picked up some yellow in here too. So add a little bit of a black to give it a little depth. And pull out some of the cyan. And click OK to that. And let's click into that, hit select and mask. Let's feather that selection just a little bit. And click OK. So, I don't know about you guys, but that's a pretty cool looking image. I'm not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. So let's come back in here and let's go to the little icon here for our adjustment layers, and let's go to our curves adjustment and calculate it here. I don't know if that helps, but I think it does. We're gonna come right here to the foot of the data, and we're just gonna lift it just slightly. Right there. And click OK. or click it out of the way. And then let's click that layer mask and hit Control I. You see how our foreground color is not white, so we're going to point on it and hit the letter D. That changes it from black and white. You can see these two arrows will change the foreground color, so we want the foreground to be set to white. And we're going to click our brush tool. Let's kind of raise our opacity up some. Our flow's at almost 40%. And with that selected, now we're just going to kind of paint in around the horse head here. Paint the flame. Paint this area right here. Let's widen the brush using our bracket tool. So you can see where we've painted here, turn it on and off. See that? All we've done is just highlighted, painted back in the areas that we put the level adjustment on, but not everything. So let's right click on that, hit selected mask, and then feather that selection, and click OK. Cool. Alright, so now let's do a little bit of sharpening, and we're going to do some selective sharpening because we obviously don't want to sharpen everything. So let's create a stamp layer on top of everything by hitting the Shift, Control, and Alt key at the same time and pressing the letter E. Creates a stamp. And then let's go in here to Filter, not Lens. Let's cancel that. We're going here to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Another powerful tool, so let's really boost the clarity. See what that does there. That's going to also add some sharpness. We're going to boost the vibrance and the saturation. And we'll go in here to the Tonal Curve tab. We're going to boost the highlights and the lights. Not too much. Drop our shadows down just a little bit. Add some sharpness, and then follow it up with just a little bit of color, or luminance and color noise reduction, and click OK to that. You can see that really boosted it right there. I like that. So we can rename this one Camera. But I kind of got sidetracked, didn't I? From sharpness. Let's duplicate that layer. And we're going to call this a layer Smart Sharp. Smart Sharp's pretty cool, but it really will jack your image up if you're trying to do it globally, I've found. So if we come in here to Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. We just really want to sharpen up around the horse head. You see what it does? It almost pixelates everything. Zoomed in, it looks terrible, but from a distance, it looks pretty good. So we can turn our preview on and off so you can really see. Let's see if I can zoom in here just a little bit. Really sharpens it up. But it'll also pinpoint your stars and put little halos around them. So I don't really want to apply this to the whole image. I just want to apply this to the parts of the image that I want to be a little sharper. Let's see the effects globally. So once again, click the layer, select the layer mask, Control I to invert the layer mask, paintbrush. Use our bracket keys to kind of tone that, or kind of reduce the radius of the paintbrush. And then we're just going to paint in some sharpness. Just along here. Maybe sharpen up that these little tendrils right in here. And maybe some of this cloud. This is a really cool detail in here. So the effects are very subtle, but definitely noticeable. So with that done, let's do a little contrast, spot contrast, by doing another curves adjustment layer. You can see how wide our histogram's gotten here. So let's just bring it down. There. Give it some contrast. We're going to do some spot contrast. Click that. Once again, invert the layer mask. Foreground set to white. Select our paintbrush tool. Our opacity is at 24%, flows at 38%. Let's use our bracket tools to just come in here and kind of work on some of these darker areas. Let's look at what we've done here. Subtle, but you can definitely see a difference. We'll go right below. Definitely get in here to the horse. Some of these areas right in here. And by creating these dark kind of shadows, it really creates depth. You can really see how that, watch that. See the difference? Magic. Let's do it again. See how we're creating that depth subtly? So let's look at it globally. You can really see the difference, especially in here in the flame. Okay. So let's do another adjustment layer. We're going to go into vibrance, and we can go to just adjust globally the vibrance and saturation. Just going to boost those. I like that. And what we can do now is this is whole kind of like aesthetics or details here. We can do shift and then come down here to this last adjustment layer, the Smart Sharpen. Highlight all those and drag that down and create a folder. And we're going to call that color adjustment. And now that that's a folder, you can actually drop the opacity down. And you can see it really will affect everything. It's the affecting the opacity of everything that we've done and added to that folder. Okay, so let's kind of reduce some of these stars and give this thing a little bit more pop. So hit the Shift key, Control key, and Alt key at the same time. Press the letter E. Creates a stamp on top. And we're going to duplicate that. And with the top layer selected, we're going to go over here to our Astronomy Action tool set and go down here to, let's see, Select Bright Stars. Run that. Got a lot of blue in our stars, which if I was really working on this, I would definitely be working on some of the stars. We got a little too blue. But like I said, this is basically just high level combining and processing. So you can see everything that this action's doing to select our stars. So all of our brighter stars have been selected. You can see down here. So let's modify that selection just to get a little bit more of the stars. So we're going to go modify, expand. Let's expand it by 3 pixels. And then let's go select, modify, feather, and feather by 2 pixels. So I like that. Let's hit Control J to turn that off. And we'll come in here to Filter, Other, Minimum. And I've got that preset at a 0.8. Let's click that and see what it looks like. So it's reduced the stars just enough, just to kind of make the nebulosity kind of stand out. So I like that. Let's just merge it now. So, like I said, we've definitely got some blue stars we can work on, but for the most part here, we've got a really cool looking image. We blended this hydrogen alpha data. We created an HAR version, pasted that back into the red channel of our horse head. Look at that. And then with everything combined, this is what we have. So we've shown some cool ways to do some background noise reduction. I think with this image as sharp as it is, though, we could probably come in here and duplicate that copy. Go into our astronomy action tool set and come down here to space noise. Let's run that. So you can see the steps that it goes through to get to that point. So that's done. Let's do a comparison. Kind of zoom in on this right here. Yeah, it's definitely smoothed it out. We still maintain a lot of our detail, so I'm liking it, digging it. Cool. Okay, well that's basically it. That's mono imaging. It's how to combine the 3 different colors now that I'm not doing one-shot color. And then also adding the hydrogen alpha data to really enhance the image. So I think my next video is probably going to be on narrowband, the Hubble palette, so stay tuned for that. And until then, clear skies.